I'm going to be talking about some ways that you can structure your math block, what to do with the 60 minutes of time that you have for math per day. So I have a couple of ideas. First of all, though, you're probably not going to do the same structure every single day. You really need to be thinking about what is your purpose of the lesson? What is your overall goal? What do you want to happen during that 60 minutes? And it won't be the same purpose every day. So I'm going to start with my first idea, and you can see I'm going to get to about 5 different structures that you can use. Okay, so the first one is one that is based on a model for teaching that's called the 5 E's. And you can look up the 5 E's and you can basically see them play out here. So you start with an engage or a hook. So you do something that kind of sets up the problem to be interesting for students. Then you have them explore. Then you explain some things that happened during the exploration. After that, the students elaborate on that by practicing and applying and discussing in small groups. And then finally, you evaluate. And actually, evaluate might happen throughout the lesson because you're going to be evaluating how students are doing. But then also at the end, you can evaluate. So you start with your hook. You get kids involved in being interested in the problem. Then you have them explore. So this might mean, like, let's say you were doing something with multiplication. Maybe you have students examine some arrays and notice, oh, wow, if I have a 2 by 4 array, it's like adding 2 4 times or adding 4 2 times. And what does that look like visually? So you're really having students discover. You're having them explore. You're doing something that makes math visual. And you're also having them make some connections between what they know. Okay, so all of that's happening in exploration. Then you would go into your mini lesson, and that might be your Pearson lesson that's going to consolidate some of the ideas that came about in the exploration. And then you move on to some practice in groups and the evaluation. Okay. Next, I want to talk about what to do when you want to incorporate eSpark into your block. So it is really important that our students are getting 60 minutes per week on eSpark, okay? And optimally, that would be 20 minutes 3 times a week. So if you have time in your schedule, it doesn't have to be during your math block. So if you have an opportunity, maybe there's a day you don't have a special and you have a little extra chunk of time, or you have 10 minutes before students go to lunch and you could kind of sneak it in that way, that's great. But if you need to work it into your math block, and there's going to be a few days that you are going to need to do that, I have a couple of structure ideas for that. So I'm going to focus on one at a time here. So this first one is you would start with a math talk, and then you would maybe do the mini lesson. Then you would move into either you would choose, do I want to do 2 stations, or maybe I want to have students practice. And if you're going to have students practice, I really like using something like Formative or Class Kick to give that practice to students. But so you're going to give about 20 minutes of time to do something like that. And then you have your 20 minutes of time that all the students are going to be on eSpark. And you as the teacher can use this time to look at those videos or conference with students about what they're doing in eSpark. And so everybody's sort of doing the same thing at the same time. The other option for incorporating eSpark into your block is, again, you would start with a math talk, move into a mini lesson, but this time you split your class in half. And so half of your class is going to be on stations or practice, and the other half of the class would be on eSpark. So half the class jumps on eSpark. You are meeting maybe with a small group from this half of the class, so maybe a fourth of the class is your small group, while the other kids work on something, and that's going to take 20 minutes, or 10 minutes and 10 minutes, and they flip. And then you have the other half of the class go on eSpark, and the class that was started on eSpark would do practice or stations. Okay, so basically during that time, you're busy with the group that's not doing eSpark, and then you would need to find some time later to review their work from eSpark, look at their videos and stuff like that. Okay, so a couple of ideas of how you could do eSpark. Now, let's say there's a day that you don't necessarily need to incorporate eSpark. So you have a day, maybe, and this would be maybe a couple days per unit. So one time with maybe a couple days, maybe 3 days overall per unit or something like that. This is really the times when you want to be innovative in some way. You want kids to create. Maybe they're going to make a movie. Maybe they're going to do stop action. You could have them do some type of a stop action to illustrate their thinking. Maybe you could use explain everything and you could have them working on that. So when you want to do something like that, here's a structure. So you might start with a math talk. Always important to have a rubric for your project. So you always want to give kids a reminder of what's important. Then you give them some work time. I set this for about 30 minutes because, you can't stay engaged in something for maybe much longer than that. And again, this is sort of a recipe. You would do what's best for your students. So if 30 minutes is too long, make this be 20 minutes and you can do more time for reflection at the end. Really, this is just kind of meant to be a guideline to sort of give you an idea of where to start. Okay. All right, so after I did put in a little bit of time though for some self-assessment. Reflection is really important when you're working on projects, and then also you want to kind of have some type of summary conclusion. You could even do a little exit slip or something like that at the end. Okay, and then the last structure that I came up with was sort of the traditional idea about stations. Again, you wouldn't do this every single day. A few times a week would be my max. And it really you have to decide what is your purpose for the lesson. But if you're doing stations, maybe one station is the teacher station. And then you could have, a game, you could have a practice app, and you could have some type of an activity. Okay. And students would rotate through the stations. I think a lot of us are familiar with the structure. If anything, I wouldn't stay that you have to I always have to have a game here. If you find two good activities, I would do two activities. You don't want to get to the point where you're just searching for a game because you're supposed to have a game station. Really, the idea of station is just having 4 high quality activities that students can engage in that help them with their thinking. Okay, I built in a little time for an intro to the station and also a little time for an exit slip or conclusion to sort of consolidate your thinking at the end. So 5 ideas for you to sort of take back and think about how you could implement in your room. Really, I think the main point is to think of these as recipes. And when you first, I don't know if you enjoy cooking, but if you do, you know that when you first look at a recipe, right, it might tell you the ingredients to put in, and you might follow that recipe to the T. I'm going to put that ingredient in, and this ingredient in. As I try it and I realize, I really don't like this ingredient as much, I wonder what it would taste like if I put this ingredient in instead. That really is how I thought about these structures. These really are just recipes. So yeah, you might want to follow them in the beginning and kind of get a flavor for how it works, but maybe you don't like doing a math talk at the beginning. Maybe your students benefit from moving the math talk to the end of the lesson. Or maybe you want the math talk in the middle, sort of as a brain break. Maybe you're saying, no, my students can't handle going to the carpet in between. That would totally throw them off. I need to wait till the end to move them to the carpet. You really want to think about your students as learners as well as your style as a teacher, and then you can kind of make changes to these structures to make them work for you. But overall, I just wanted to give a couple of ideas of how you can structure your math block so that you are engaging students, you are giving them time on eSpark and giving them that practice, as well as a chance to innovate and a chance to practice what they need to know.